So today we want to study the concept of Eid Echad Nem and Bisurim. And we know that in Dini Mominos we need two Eidim. Al Pishnayim Eidim Yokum Dover. And then we have Exer Shava Dover Dover Mimom. And then in our Rayas, Kiyat Imotze Boyer Vas Dover, that you also require two Eidim. And we know that in Dini Nefashos and in all Onshim we require two Eidim. The Torah says that you're not allowed to receive an Eid Echad L'chol Oven L'chol Chatos. But in Isurim, Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. And the Gemara Havamina back here on Daf Beis Amid Beis, if you take a look Ula Rabbah, that's about 7 lines down, the Omer L'Fishay B'Kimul Shma, that maybe Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, and therefore the Shliach could testify B'fanei Nechtav, establish the Lishma and the get, and the woman can now, through the Shlichus, get remarried. And why? Because the Shliach is no worse than Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. So Gemara says, wait a minute. I have two arguments against you. Eid Echad Nem Bisurim would only apply if there's no cheskas isur. In the case of a married woman, clearly she has a cheskas isur. And therefore, the Eid Echad is not believed against the chazakah. When we have a piece of meat, we don't know if it's chalev or shuman, there's no chazakah one way or the other, and we believe the Eid Echad. Secondly, not only do we have a cheskas isur, we have a davar shebe'erva. I want to be mater the erva veishasi. So for that you need two eidim. Ein davar shebe'erva pachas mishnai.
We're adding a vav here. Vehevi davar shebe'erva.
Okay. So now we're going to try to understand this halach of Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. Rashi says here, Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, Sharei Hamina Torah Kol Echad V'Echad B'Yisrael Afrashas Truma V'Al Ashchita V'Al Nikor V'Giv V'Chelev. But Rashi doesn't give us a clue as to how you know that Eid Echad is believed. You know, he's giving you all these cases, but he's leaving out a piece. Do you follow me, Rabbosai? Okay, we believe a person to say I shechted properly. We believe a person to testify that I was mafresh trumas and meisres. We believe a person to say I took off all the chalev and I was menaker. How does Rashi know such a thing? So the Ritva, which you'll see on your first page of the Otzer Ayunim, adds a very important piece to Rashi. I'm not sure if the Ritva maybe had a different gears in Rashi, but if you look on the right column on a page that may say Yud Ches on the top right, and on that right column, if you go down to a section called Makar Halacha, and you'll see a paragraph that starts Gam, yeah? On line 3 says, "Baritva hevi divrei Rashi bezel lashon." It's very interesting if the Ritva had a different Gerson Rashi, or maybe he was embellishing Rashi. Sharei kol echad v'echad hamina Torah al hashchita. Okay, I'm not sure what he means here by kol echad v'echad. And it's usually we believe the shochet. I don't know, maybe there are other people who saw the shchita. I don't know. But the main punchline that the Ritva adds to Rashi is in the next line. She'im yata omer came. You know, if you're going to come and say, well, mechatesi, how do you know that we believe the shochet, or for that matter, anyone else, to testify that there was a proper shchita? Is then eino the misachsein eitzel chaver, like this, like a almost like a contemporary language. How are you, gentlemen? Good to see you. So let me ask you a question. Okay, you guys came in a little late, so I'm going to ask you the fine question. Did you ever get invited to someone's house? Okay. Did you eat at their house?
Yes.
You ate it. Did they offer you milchiks? Did they offer you fleishiks? Did they offer you vegetables? How do you know the milchiks is kosher? How do you know the fleishiks is kosher? How do you know that they check the vegetables for bugs? How do you know anything? Is there a rabbanut to that hechsher? Are there two Eidim who testified? The answer is you can't be a guest in anyone's house unless we assume that Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. In fact, every time you come home, let's say your wife is very proficient, she serves you 3 meals a day. So how do you eat 3 meals a day? I don't know if this knocked off the computer, but anyway, how do you eat? How do you eat 3 meals a day without knowing that the food is kosher? So obviously you're relying on your wife. So the language of the Dva here, the Dva was a good 8 centuries ago, is very contemporary. He says, Eid Adam Mitzachsen, Eitzel Chavero. The whole institution of eating at someone's house and being a guest is completely impossible. What are you going to have, a bezdin? Imagine if you needed a bezdin to be makabel to Eidim. It knocked it off. Yeah.
No, sure.
Now this means that he's closing it down. All right, I could try to.
It's recording. It's good.
What?
It's still recording. Still good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you do in the following case? Could you imagine establishing a bezdin in every single home to receive 2 Eidim 3 times a day, will testify in front of a bezdin that the food is kosher, it was shechted properly, etc., etc. Now, I don't see this in Rashi here. Okay, the Ritva may have had a different text in Rashi, but he quotes here a Rashi of Masechta Yevamos, the Sugya of Echad Nem Bisurin in Peches and Yevamos says the following. So you'll see that paragraph right before that Rashi. So for those who came in now, you're looking on page Yud Ches, the first page, and you're on the right column after it says Makar Allah. Yeah? Mm-hmm. As they say here, Yesh. Right? So Rashi says the following. V'ha vade pshitalon. Now, if you hear the words pshitalon, I'm just going to ask you a rhetorical, obvious question. Is that a svara or a pasuk when you hear the words pshitalon? Svara. It sounds like Rashi is going to tell us that Echad Nem Bisurin has no source.
Well, that's what he's telling us here. Sharehem Mina Torah. It doesn't tell us the Torah gives us meaning it's obvious the Torah.
Oh, if it's obvious, then you're not operating with a pasuk. Rashi doesn't have to quote a pasuk and say, well, it says in the pasuk that you rely on the testimony of one aid. No. It's got to be there. The whole Torah has to be based and predicated on the assumption that a person is not choshed to be meshaker. So what the Ritva says in Rashi here in Gittin is explicit in Rashi and Yevamos. Who does he mean by b'nei beiso? Probably his own wife. So we see here, Abosai, and this is very, very important for me today, that Rashi sheet is that Eid Echad Nem Bisurin is based on, let's call it an outstanding svara, that Eid Adam Ochel Afilu B'nei Beiso, unless Eid Echad is Nema, meaning the Torah is not Choshed B'Ksherim, person is assumed to be telling the truth. However, we're going to see that Tosfos has a different approach. In fact, Tosfos here on Daf Beis Amud Beis, Dibra Masle Eid Echad Nem Bisurin, on the first line, he says, Lo hoyelo lahaski afroshes tru shkita. Rashi gives us a number of examples, one of which I can accept, but 2 of which I can't accept, because we're trying to establish Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. So if Rashi is quoting the halacha of Nikar Agid V'Chelev Nicha, because you have a piece of meat and you don't know if there's chelev mixed into the meat, the Eid Echad is believed. He's not contradicted by any chazakah. But we have a case of shchita where behema b'chayev b'cheskas isur omedes, or we have a case of tevel, which is a cheskas isur, and now someone comes forward and he testifies that there was a shchita kahu again and removes the isur, or that there was afroshes trumas and maisus and that removes the isur tevel. That is a contradiction between the edus of an Eid Echad and the chazaka of cheskas isur, and the Gemara itself establishes that there's no reliability on an Eid Echad against the Cheskas Isur. So there's a pella that's going on over here. It's amazing. Because Rashi is saying like it's a svara pshuta that when a shochet says that this is shechted properly, I could certainly rely on him. And Tosfos is saying, how could you rely on him? The Gemara establishes that you don't believe in Eid Echad against the Cheskas Isur. So now Tosfos is going to have to face the following question. How could it be? What is Tosfos implying that we need 2 Eidim and a Bezdin to be makabel Eidus on every testimony that this was shechted and that the meat is kosher? So Tosfos says, the afal gav dis chazik bisura, he still believed against the Cheskas Isur. Okay, we're about to drop a bomb over here. Mishum de biyodo lesakno. So we want to emphasize the word biyodo. The Tosfos is saying that there are two categories over here. There's one category called Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, and that's limited to a case of Safek Chalev, Safek Shuva, where there's no Cheskes Isur. Now we have a new category. And that category is not called Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, but it's called Biyodo Lesakno, which means that you have an Isur on a Behemoth B'chayeho, but the Shochet has the ability to remove that Isur. Or you have an Isur Tevel, and by being Mafresh, you have the ability of what? Of removing that Isur. That's called an Amonis of Biyodo. It's possible that Tosfos is operating with two halachas because Biyodo, he thinks, is a very powerful, compelling logic, and maybe we don't even need a pasuk. But on the other hand, Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, maybe that would need a pasuk. Now, why do I say Eid Echad Nem Bisurim needs a pasuk? We just finished saying that Rashi says it's an outstanding svara. We just finished saying that Eid Echad Nem Bisurim, according to Tosfos, means that he's not contradicting a Cheskas Isur. That should be logic. But I say it only because I look at the bottom part of Tosfos. And at the end of this Tosfos, he says, this is 2 lines up before the end, he says, V'im tomer minolan Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. So that Tosfos is not willing to accept Rashi's approach, that Eid Echad Nem Bisurim is based on the fact that we eat meat from a shochet, or we eat vegetables because he was mafresh, and he says he was mafresh because that comes under the principle of biyodo, and that's not going to justify Echad Bisurim. So now your outstanding svara is not going to hold water because we are believing someone against the Cheskas Isur. In the case of a shochet, in the case of Afrashas Trumas and Maisras, Minolan, where do you have a source for that? Yesh Lomar, Tosfos answers, the Alfina Minida. He quotes a Gemara Ksubis, V'safra la. And what does the word la mean? The Gemara says, Li atzma. Now we're in deep trouble. Now we're really thick in the mud. Because she has a Cheskas Isur Nida. She's a Ro'adam. And now she's coming to testify that she counted Zayin Nikim, and she went to a mikveh, she was Toveles, and she removed the Cheskas Isur. Well, guess what? We just finished saying that Eid Echad is not Neman against the Cheskas Isur. And now Tosfos is telling me that the source for Eid Echad Nem Bisurim is V'safra la. So then it's a different category. It's a category of Biyada. And that's what Tosfos asks now. And Tosfos says, V'im tomer im kain, afilu chazik isura, then she should be believed even against the Cheskas Isur, right? She had a Cheskas Isur Nida. Right? And now she's saying she's not a Nida. So if the source for Eid Echad Nem Bisurim is the Safra law, let's come to the conclusion that Eid Echad is never even against the Cheskas Isur. Yesh Lomar the Eid of a Chazaka Shetei Roa Kol Shok She'aru Shiva L'tar. In other words, Tosfos is saying that a woman is called a shofas. And if she's shofas, then she has a cheskes isur. But shofas only applies during a certain period of time. After that period of time passes, she's no longer shofas, but rather she's a posekes. And if she's assumed to be a posekes, then we don't have a cheskes isur. There's only one problem. Okay, she's a posekes. Does that make her muter? She still needs what? Tefillah. So she still has a Cheskas Isur. So Tosfos realizes that maybe he solved the problem of Cheskas Isur vis-a-vis Posekes, meaning she was a Ro'adam, but now she's no longer Ro'adam, so you've solved that problem. What? But she still has a Cheskas Isur. Kapi din, she's Asura. And now Tosfos says a parallel. Look at Tosfos answers. V'gam biyodo litbo. So it's funny, Tosfos makes a circle, he comes back to square one. He just finished establishing that Rashi has no right to quote the case of Shechita and Afrashas Trumas and Maisros. Why not? Because that's a different category of Nemonis. Namely what? Biyado, even against the Cheskas Isur. And then he says, well, if that be the case, so what is the source for Eid Echad Nem Bisurim? So you expected Tosfos to come up with a case where he finds a pasuk somewhere in Tanakh that says that in a suffix which doesn't have a cheskas isur, we believe Eid Echad. He's not willing to accept an outstanding svara that, ain't other misachse in Eitzel Chavero. And instead he says, Nida. Nida's a cheskas isur biyada. She can be tovelis. She's posekes, and she can be tovelis. Okay, so tell me the truth. Is it an emunus of biyada, or is it an emunus of Eid Echad and Bisurin? Tosfos Minolan, what's the source for Eid Echad and Bisurin? He's for Allah liatzma. But then he comes back full swing and he says, no, it's an emunus of biyada. Apparently, Tosfos says that when you have a cheskas isur, but it's biyado, that's the same as a case where there's no biyado and there's no cheskas isur. And it's all shava v'shava. So why did he attack Rashi? He attacked Rashi because even though it's shava v'shava, you need a pasuk for that. If the Torah is going to tell me that you'll believe against the cheskas isur b'medvar move, if it's, help me out here, guys, biyado, then I could derive the conclusion that Echad and Bisurin b'shkos shava v'shava. But until you make that breakthrough, and you have a choice, either you find the Torah saying Echad and Bisurin when there's no cheskas isur, or the Torah is going to say Echad and Bisurin even against the cheskas isur if it's biyado. Once you have one of those two, then you can make the svara, the calculation of dimyon zelazeh, and equate the two. Again, we're going to need a lot of work to figure out why these two are equal. But the bottom line is that we're going to remove any chashash sheker, either because there's no cheskas isur to begin with, why should be choshev b'sheker, or even if a case where a person may have vested interest because they are testifying about themselves. Nevertheless, if it's biyado, we trust them because they can do it themselves and it's biyado. So Chaim, if you want to pass over those pages to Yaakov, because he likes to see the pages. Okay, we have a seat for you here, Yaakov, if you like.
Yeah, what?
A seat for you.
Wow. Tosfos seems to be saying,
yeah, I'm listening. I'm just getting myself in back.
The vegan biyad alipo seems to be extra. Tosfos' real answer is it's not, for whatever reason, it seems to be a tremendous chiddush in nida. It's not an example of his chazik isura. Not that it is his chazik isura and it's biyada.
You think it's not his chazik isura at all?
I don't, that's what he says. Avru shiva. I mean, it seems to be a tremendous chiddush in nida. Avru shiva tahora memela velo is chazik isura. And then he could stop there. Why add v'gam biyad litva?
So I thought gam biyad litva means that you've solved one element of cheskas isur, but there's still another element of it. What generates the cheskas isur? First of all, the re'iyas tam, and secondly, the need for tefillah. So even if you solve problem number one, and you say, well, there's no cheskas isur of shofas because she's now becheskas posekes, but nevertheless, you still have the problem of tahara b'tefillah. And on that, she has a cheskas isur. So let's say a tinokes bas yom echad sees dam nida. For the rest of her life, she's a nida until she's tovelis. So she's becheskas isur. And on that, Tosfos adds the word biyada. And it fits into place now. Because biyada, we said, operates even against a cheskas isur. But then Tosfos is making this equation between biyado in a cheskas isur and Eid Echad and Bisurin without biyado when there's no cheskas isur. And Tosfos is saying we need a source from one of these two, and then we can, by equation, derive the conclusion of the other category. But Tosfos is not willing to accept the outstanding svara. So I will say, just in sum, for Yaakov's purpose, because this is the point that we're going to build on today, there seems to be a machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos about Eid Echad and Bisurin. Whereas Rashi understands that Eid Echad and Bisurin is logical. Within the framework of the Torah, I cannot fulfill the Torah and live a normal life unless I assume that Eid Echad and Bisurin. Tosfos is not satisfied with that. Tosfos says, no, we need a pasuk. And what bothers my mind is when you have such a strong svara, what was Tosfos thinking? Did Tosfos come to the conclusion that if not for the pasuk of his safra, I would have required 2 eighths every single time I want to eat a piece of meat? Hell, The Svara seems to be very, very compelling. And guess what? How many times in Shas, this is a rhetorical question, how many times in Shas does the Gemara say, Eid Echad Nem Bisurim Minola? Zippa. Not even once. My problem is that Rashi contradicts himself. Because Rashi in Masechta Chulin says that Eid Echad Nem Bisurim is based on a pasuk.
Is he specified with?
Yeah, that's what we're going to see now. So we're on the bottom right column on that first page, not in the notes, but in the text. The Rashi B'chul. Do you see such a paragraph?
Mm-hmm.
Rashi says, guess what? In the parsha of Shchitas Kodshim, the Torah says that if we're dealing with, let's say, chatas, or let's say a korban osham, I'm excluding an olah, because an olah doesn't get eaten by the Kohanim. But any korban that's eaten by the Kohanim, the Torah goes out of its way to say that whichever Kohen does the shchita, and it could be a zar as well, the Kohanim will eat and partake of that meat. That's even a mitzvah, right? The Gemara says, Kohanim ochlim u'bailim iskaper. How can they eat from the shchita? So Rashi quotes this pasuk to establish that Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. This is very odd because Rashi himself in two places, both in Yevamis and here in Gittin, establishes that Echad is an outstanding svara. So if you take a look in the notes, there's, I think, an Oz Zion over here. Now, I'm going to say this Baal Peh, and hopefully I'm not making this up. You'll do me a favor and read it. I think it's in Ha'ar Zion. Can you do me that favor as I speak? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember the names anymore. This is an essay of 10 pages long. It's endless. You would need at least a month to go through this. Anyway, so it works like this. There are two different dinim of Eid Echad Nem Bisurin, and one Rashi is willing to learn and derive from Svara, and the other one Rashi requires a pasuk. So there are now two different categories of Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. He says the following. There's one category which is called Heichadeleka Cheskas Isu. And that, he says, is a gather of Nemonis Eid Echad, which Rashi says has to be. Just one second. Let me see it inside. I think. Do we find it by any chance?
Yeah, it's the Zion.
Is it Zion?
Yeah.
Just one second. I just didn't want to slow myself down here because we have so much to accomplish. I don't know. Now I'm not so sure that it's there. Maybe I saw it elsewhere. All right. Anyway, you hear the general structure here of Osai and Rashi. It seems that to reconcile these two Rashis, we're going to have to assume that in certain cases, we cannot derive the logical conclusion that Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. And in those cases, when you have Ischazik Isura, we're going to have to add another pasuk to teach me that since it's biyado, he's nem, which would seem to indicate that Rashi operates with two different dinim. One din, which is Eid Echad Nem Bisurin without a cheskas isur, and that doesn't require a pasuk. But then we have to go beyond that in cases where there's a cheskas isur. For that, we require a pasuk.
How's that different than Tosfos? How's that different than Tosfos?
So both Rashi and Tosfos, then, if you take the Rashi and Chulin, are establishing that, yeah, this, but the trouble is, see, what does the pasuk v'safra mean? The Gemara says li'atzma. The Tosfos assumes that operates midin Eid Echad Nem Bisurin and possibly midin biyado against the cheskas isur. Well, I don't know. Does that what the Gemara really means when it says li'atzma? Like, for example, if a woman is a nida, she has the same violation of an isur bia as the boel, correct? And therefore, li'atzma means that she knows, like, there's halacha called shavya nafshi chatich disur. If I know that this is asur, again, it could be I have to say it out loud, or maybe it's enough dvarim shebelev, I don't know, but I accepted upon myself an isur. Now I know that that isur was removed. So that's what it means v'safra lo li'atzma. She was the one who established that she saw a dam. Let's say that no one else knew that she saw a dam. That's called shavya nafshi. And now she says, I counted, zayin nikim, etc., etc. And therefore, the same person, it's almost like a pesha asur, pesha hitir, who established the isur, can now remove the isur. So therefore, she's allowed to have a relationship with her husband because she knows that she's tahora. But does that mean that the Torah, therefore, is matir the husband to rely on? In other words, she's believed for herself, midin shavya nafshe. But does that give her objective nemanis for someone else? That's what confuses my mind here. Tosa is assuming the suffer lovely atzma is like addressing the husband, that the husband could rely on her testimony that she was so ferrous.
Isn't that practically what happens?
Correct, but I'm just wondering if Tosas is justified in quoting that pasuk and the way Chazal interpret that pasuk as establishing a source for Echad Bisur.
How can you explain it otherwise?
That's what I'm saying. It might be a halach in Shavya Nafsh. It has nothing to do with Echad Bisur. Echad Bisur says
It
that.
has to include,
No, somebody sees the blood at some point.
Well, one second, Mike.
it has to include the husband.
Just because of the extra word law.
Otherwise, the Torah is telling you nonsense. She's muteret, but he's asur. Has to include the husband.
No, but the Torah is telling you a halach in Shavya Nafshi, that the person who is Shavya Nafshi can remove the Shavya Nafshi. What does that mean in terms of nemanis of edus? That I don't know. You know, the Torah go therefore one step further and say there's edus over here. Maybe he needs more clarification.
Why is it?
Why would you need a pasuk to remove your own? I mean, that would just be logical. You wouldn't need a pasuk.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Pesha asa, pesha hitir
The pasuk would have to teach
does
you
not
that
really
it's not
apply over here. I'll tell you why.
It has to
Because
be
pesha
serious.
asar doesn't really mean pesha asar. Pesha asar means that I created a chazaka that you own the mama, right? So I say sada zushal avicha isa, and you had no clue that this sada was your father's sada. So therefore, in terms of what we know, it's a pesha asar. So the machzik in this case is giving the son a chazak. That's called pesha asar. But in a real case of pesha asar, where you establish that this is a chefza d'isura, I don't know if you could say pesha hitir. You follow what I mean? Then you need ataris nidar. So, for example, the go ahead.
It doesn't seem so different than a case of Nida. At the end of the day, she is the one who creates that chazaka. Without her acknowledging that she's Adam, there's no chazaka.
And therefore, what?
It's not like, you know, a certain number of days pass and we assume there's a chazaka. So that I'm saying that's why pesha shasarhu pesha shehiter works in the case of Nida.
Because she created the isur.
She did create this.
Because we don't know anything without her testimony, and therefore she should be able to remove that isur, even though she created that isur on someone else.
Well, what about a case where she
I'm
doesn't?
just saying-
At least for him.
What about
Yeah,
a case
but
where
I'm
he
just saying,
doesn't?
once she created the isur, now he accepts her testimony, and now it's Shavya Nafshi. He accepts the fact that she's a chefza d'isur, if you want to say that. Now she says, well, I went to the
And she
mikveh.
says, right,
Okay, but I don't know if that's a pesha. I'm sorry I quoted that halacha in pesha. It's not really relevant here. What I meant to say was that there's a halacha that I can establish what I know to be true, and that's what it means liatzma. But to say, therefore, that she has objective nemanis for someone else, I don't know, I find that a little bit of a jump. But just get back online. So here we have the following. The main chakira here in the first 5 pages that I think you said is how do we understand that Echad and Bisur?
You were distinguishing between Istadzik Isura and not Istadzik Isura.
The Gemara on Daf Beis.
Yeah, I'm saying, but like between Rashi and Rashi, right? That Rashi on the one hand is saying
that by the case in Chulin, which is really by Zvachim, it's a Chazik Yisur, therefore you need a pasuk. But by Shchita and Truma, which is a Chazik
No,
Yisur,
not Shchita and Truma, but Nikra Gid. Again, when Rashi quotes Shchita and Afrashas Truma, as Eli pointed out before, we go back to Tosas' Svara, that Biyado makes it into Eid Echad Nem Bisur. So Rashi gives us a number of examples of Eid Echad Bisur. But when Rashi says that there's an outstanding.
He says in that list, which is the source that it's a svara,
Right.
He says a precious truma shchita,
Correct.
which is a chazik yisura.
But I'm saying it could be that you have to break, in the light of Rashi and Chulin, you have to break down Rashi into two categories, two kvutzot.
In the same Rashi, in the same sentence.
I don't know. Maybe. If you have a better answer, I'm willing to hear it. But
and even the Ritva's version isn't shahari kol echad ve'echad ne'aman al nikr gidachela. It's shahari kol echad ve'echad al hashchita.
Right. Which is be kedeged echezkes isu.
Right. Kovi, what Rashi's doing here in Cholin, Rashi has a source that, and I think this is what you were alluding to in footnote 7 or 9, whatever that was, that we have a source that in cases of biyado, we have ne'amanus. But the entire ne'amanus of biyado only builds off of Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. Meaning,
right.
the Marik says that the biyado comes to weaken the chezkas iser,
right.
And then we fall back to our original ne'amanus. For that, we don't need a pasuk. Maybe for the biyado, that's what
right.
the pasuk.
We need a halacha biyado that has to be derived from a pasuk that biyado reduces or neutralizes the cheskes. So now we go back to the svara of Eid Echad Nem Bisurim. But again, I still think Yoni's point is well taken because Rashi gives you the impression that whether you're talking about Shchita and Afrasha or Nikra Gid, it's all B'neshima Achas. When in truth, Rashi himself says that in the case of Cheskas Isur and Biyado, we need a pasuk. So why does he quote these cases lumped together with Nikra Gid? It's a little bit strange. No, the Rashi is not, as we say in Yiddish, glach. It's not so smooth.
Could you
again? If I didn't know the Rashi Chulin, I'd be fine.
Maybe it makes more sense to flip it around, the opposite of what Daniel said. That the case where we have the pasuk is where it's not biyada, where the Kohen believes that the Yisrael shechted the animal kosher. He can't shech the animal now because the animal's already dead. Whereas the Sfar is only where if it's biyada. I'm not sure logically.
Say it again one more time.
All the cases where Rashi says the Pesfara are where it's biyada. Right, Truma, Nikar Hagid, and Shchita. The case in Chulin,
which Rashi needs a pasuk,
which has the pasuk, is where it's not biyado, because his scenario is that the Kohen believes that the Yisrael shechted it properly. The animal's already dead. The Kohen can't fix it. So maybe if it's biyado, Rashi says there's no need for a pasuk, but if it's not biyado, then we need the pasuk. The one believing it's not biyado.
But when you say
always believing the other person,
when you say you don't need a pasuk, Yoni, I don't get it. I mean, you're talking about eating at someone else's house, right? So there's an objective ne'emanos in which the ma'areach is convincing the oreach that he can eat the food,
and the animal when you serve it is already dead. Also,
it's not smooth over here.
Yeah, it doesn't mean moving forward. At one point, it was
the phrase in English, Jonathan? What's that phrase in English? A little knowledge is dangerous. Is it dangerously? In this case, I think with all, after all the, this Rashi, to Rashi and Chulin, right? Okay. So what's the main chakira for us today? This starts on Daf Yutes, called Geder Halacha, goes on to Chaf and Chaf Al. What's in these 3 pages? Be'achronim danu ma geder shel Eid Echad Nem Bisurim im hu din edus v'nischaresh isurim einon bichlal halacha shelo yakum Eid Echad v'ish l'chol over l'chol chato. So that pasuk means that we don't mete out punishments without 2 edim, but in the case of isur, we're not meting out punishments. We're trying to determine whether this chefta is a chefta d'isura, a chefta d'teira. and Eid Echad would be believed, but we're talking about Eidus, because the Torah is talking about Eidus. The Torah is saying that you need two Eidim but not Eid Echad. But the Torah says you need two Eidim for Mominos and Nefoshos and for Onshim, and don't accept one Eid. But when those limitations don't apply, and we're only talking about Isurim, then we're back to Eid Echad, who's believed b'Torah's two Eidim. And to be absolutely honest with you, Rabosai, because I'm not a total believer yet in the Mesifta, you can quote me on that. This sounded to me like can't be. No one could say such a thing. I'll tell you why. Eidus requires a Bezdin. There's no such thing as Eidus without a Bezdin. Eid Echad doesn't require Bezdin. As I said before in my example, we're going to establish in every Jewish home a Bezdin of 3 Dayanim, morning, afternoon, and evening. Right? Eid Echad Nem Bisurin doesn't require a Bezdin. Did you ever see a case where Eid Echad Nem Bisurin requires a Bezdin? Bring the shochet in front of a Bezdin, let him testify that he shechted prop. And if you never saw such a case, then the truth is, if there would be a case of Eid Echad in front of a Bezdin, I will tip my hat to you and I'll say, you know what? Einochinami, that's Eidus. For example, remember Ula? We discussed Ula in Yevamis at great length. And Ula says, Kol Makom Shemina Torah Li'ed Echad Arekan Shnayim. That's in front of Bezdin. Then I will accept you. You know what? You want to operate within Ula's frame of reference, where the Torah says we can rely on one aid, and the aid says that Meis Bailo, or the aid says that she was Nitma, and that she doesn't drink for the Meimaron, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's in front of Bezdin. Then you could say that Bezdin accepted Eidus. You don't need Eidus of 2 Eidim. The Torah says that 1 Eid is like 2 Eidim. Fine. But if we talk about Isurim, Chaim, you look at me like I fell off the moon.
No, only because we're working with the premises. Oh, the Eidus has no substance other than in front of basin. And the way I mean, I'm probably wrong, is that Eidus does have substance. It's basin that is then used to sort of solidify the Eidus. In other words, Eidus on a get. Eidus at Kedushin.
There's the
the idea that Eidus, there's no validity to Eidus other than in front of a
Why?
basin.
I don't understand. Think of secular court. There are certain rules in court, evidentiary rules in court that don't apply when you're not in court. So it could be the same thing. The whole idea of 2 Eidus.
And not every document comes in front of a court, right?
Yeah.
It's binding without.
So you some things you need certain things that
But
you
the
need.
answer is no, it's not. Meaning the fact that I collect with it is without it going into court is because I accept it.
Right.
But if I don't accept
You have
it,
to
I
pay
can't
less.
Right, then
force
again,
them.
right, then
I
you can't
can't
force
say-
it. You have to go to.
He doesn't have tchelis. Get to him later. He was the first person in this shul that came over to me to say hello to me. I waited 6 months. Why did he come over? He saw I wasn't wearing tchelis.
Get out. Get out.
I told him my Rebbe
True.
my Rebbe didn't wear tchelis. He didn't accept that, So your Rebbe is wrong. Anyway, go ahead.
The only reason I bring it up is because you're pushing against the idea that the Eidus can't exist outside of being required in a
It's
basin.
not considered Shvuas Eidus, it's not Kefel.
Yeah. I don't understand why that's
Chaim, I'll tell you something even more. Let's say 2 witnesses come in front of a bezdin. They testify, and they take the what's it called, the gravel, what's it called, the gavel, bang. We accepted the Eidus, we were Doresh and Choker, they passed all the tests and everything else. The Eidim walk out the door, I'm just dramatizing, and then they come back in and they say, wait a minute, we forgot to tell you that the Harug was a treifa or something. I don't know what. Do we accept them? What's that called? Kevan shehigid, shuven echozer umagid. Does that principle apply to Eid Echad Nem Bisurin? I told you that it was kosher. Then I did more research and I found out, guess what? It wasn't kosher, or the other way around. there are certain requirements of Eidus. Eidus is a formal legal process or procedure. Eid Echad it defies all of that.
Maybe more accurate to say Isha Neman Yisur and Eda. Yeah.
No, that you're right. Excellent. The Diuk, I have to admit, I have to tip my hat off to you because
So it's going to be Isha.
Eid Echad Neman Yisur. It sounds like it's an aid. But we're going to see here, Rabosai, do you see the second column on page Chaf, which is called Ashito She'ein Hachsheru Mitoras Eidus? All of these are going to be based on the assumption that even someone who's possibly Eidus is Neman Bisur. For example, an Isha. An Isha is Psuli Eidus. If you have any philosophical problems with that in the progressive world that we live in, I refer you to a book by Rav Moshe Meiselman called Jewish Women and Jewish Law. By the way, I asked Rav Moshe if he would republish that book. It's very hard to get a hold of it. Absolutely not. So I don't know. I guess he was closer. Yeah. I guess in the yeshiva world, he went a little bit too far. But anyway, he tries to explain that it doesn't mean that a woman is not believed, and he has many proofs that a woman is believed, blah, blah, blah. But certainly in Isurim, a woman is believed, but he goes even further. Even in Mace Baila, a woman is believed.
The nice that we have it like all the time in our country when you go to a store and the person says, no, this is kosher. So can you believe them or not? This cake, this cookie, this whatever.
Right.
Of course not.
Well, that's more complicated.
So we believe that, right? And yet he's an Ogea Be'edus. So how can an Ogea Be'edus be believed in Eid Echad Neman Yisur? He's selling me a piece of meat. He has to make a living, right?
We don't trust him. No.
Technically, you should trust him. If you don't trust him, you got a problem.
No, with that.
Why not?
Right? You don't rely on this extra, you want to do it. Ryan Lichtenstein all of a sudden used to say, when you don't trust someone's heksha, you should realize that you might be violating an Easter of Choshev Ksher.
Israel Kashrus does not have Yotzei Nefesh.
You need to have a chazaka that your host.
Same. We have the equivalent.
Is reliable.
Yeah. That makes you feel better eating in Israel, then Baruch Hashem, think that.
Right. But once you assume he's reliable, you're not going to say, well, you know what? He wants to feed me. He's expecting that next Shabbos you'll invite him. So he has the gears. There's no psul of Nagea Beidus, but in Eidus, I can trust this guy until he's the Tzaddik Adar. I have no question he's not lying, but I cannot accept his Eidus because he's Nogea B'Dava.
Because you're not in court. There's certain formal rules.
Okay, so then don't tell me that Echad Neman Yisur is Aloch of Eidus. I can't accept that. The problem is that, I didn't see Otzer Yunim for the first 70 years of my life. And now I see he quotes one Rishon after the other. It's like a who's list in Rishonim. And every single one of them says that Eid Echad is Eidus of two Eidim, but just that the Torah gave the status of one Eid as if you were two Eidim. And all of a sudden, I can't begin to tell you, I'm all shooken up. How could it be such a thing?
To be fair, the first one, for all that he puts it in the category of Shita Shu B'Torah's Eidus, that's not what the Tashbat says. He says very clearly. He says clearly it's Din Amonis Gemura Kamosh Eidim. It's not Eidim. It's Nemanas.
So maybe, I'm just going to jump off what Yoni is saying. This whole list of Rishonim here, as I call it, a who's list of Rishonim on page Chaf, what they're saying is not that the Maisa Haggadah of an Eid Echad is a Haggadah of Shnei Eidim. No. The Torah is saying that just like we rely on two Eidim, we rely on Eid Echad. But it can't be. I'll tell you why. Because if you take a look on the left column, he quotes the Rivash. Now, again, you could say that maybe the Rivash is off the beaten path. I don't know. Rivash was a Sephardic Rishon, lived about 6 centuries ago, very late Rishon. And the Rivash here on the left column, do you see a paragraph that starts with Kach? On line 3, Ein Nemonis Eid Echad B'Surim B'Isha. Again, I can't make any sense out of this. So, this requires an amount of time that I just don't have. if somebody is willing to tell me what is the Rivash saying, I come home to eat dinner and my wife says it's kosher meat. Says the Rivash, Echad nem bisurin is b'toras edus. Isha psul liedus and Gemara.
No, because without biyada.
Then cut in the next paragraph of Rivash.
Almost every single
The
case.
two paragraphs of Rivash.
Almost every single case is biyada. That's what she's believing. She's not believing without biyada. She's only believing in cases with
Only
biyada.
aim b'makom
Oh, so what are you saying now? You're saying now that what? That if there's no cheskas isur.
I'm saying what he's writing here.
No, so wait a minute. So again, I come home to eat,
Yeah,
and my wife says it's kosher.
yeah, it was biyada.
Biyada.
Everything was biyada.
That's biyada because she purchased it, or
Either that, or she could have shafted it, or she could have, she could have taken up Truman Meiser. Now it's much easier because really biyada. You go to the store and you just buy the thing that has hashgacha on it.
that makes it biyada.
Yeah, probably shafted.
Well, let me think about this one second.
Even, even all the cases.
This is biyada. Just 1 second.
No, oh, I mean, read that, but that's
He clarifies it a little bit more.
And what? And you so wait a minute. So the reason why she's believed is not.
because it's in the Sakra.
So wait, so I don't
Without-
understand. What are you saying, Daniel?
without
Eid Echad
biyada,
is like Shnei Eidim, it's Midin Eidus or not, according to the Rivash.
I'm just saying what. You,
Wait 1 second. No, let's see if we can work this out. So if there's no Cheskas Isur and it's not Biyodo, wait a second. Let me get this straight.
It's real aid doesn't suggest it's real aid.
If it's Biyodo, then I don't need Eidus.
That's me.
A new
That's
Ne'emanus
not
of
Ne'emanus
Biyodo.
Veidacha. That's called Ne'emanus Biyado.
But if it's not Biyodo, then it's Midin Eidus. Wait, just let me understand that. Are we giving more credibility to a case where there's no Cheskas Isur and there's no Biyodo?
Yeah, that.
Because that's already upgraded to the level of 2 Eidim.
That's Eidah. She's not doing anything. When
And
something's
if it's not
biyado,
Biyodo, then we can't trust the woman because she can't serve as an aid.
she's
No,
not
just 1 second, let me just digest this. She can't serve as an aid because she's mipsue eidus. And what? And Eidechan then bisurin. So we upgrade the requirement in a case of Eno Biyodo, and there we're going to require 2 aid. But the Eid Echad is believed the Torah's aids, but only if he's kosher
not 2 aid,
aids.
1 aid.
The Eid Echad, I
1
said.
aid,
That's
yeah,
what I
1
meant to
aid.
say. So the Eid Echad is believed the Torah's aids if he's kosher aids.
Yeah.
But if it's a case of Biyodo, that's a separate halacha. And there we don't need aids. So the Rivash agrees. Just 1 second. So wait a minute. So if it's not Biyodo, then an Isha is psula. Why? Because in the case of what? Wait, just Rabosai, let's just try to understand the svara here. Do you want to take a minute just to digest what we're saying without Shulchan Aruch? We'll leave out the Shulchan Aruch. Let's just use our logic here. The Rivash, says Daniel, is only passing an Isha in a case where there's no Cheskas Isra and there's no Biyod. So there we have to jack up the requirement to the level of Eidus, and she doesn't qualify. Well, Psula, go for whatever you want to call it. But now we have a case of Biyodo, and Biyodo is a separate what? Is a separate category, and there we don't need what, Rabosai? We don't need Eidus. Why? Because it's Biyodo. If it's Biyodo, you can circumvent the need for Eidus.
What's the Rivash talking about? Like, why are you assuming it's a different case? I'm not. I'm just reading what he wrote here. He just wrote, "She'ein emanus eid echad b'isuri b'isha b'makom she'ein ze biyada." I'm not being the Chayish anything. I'm just
Now the fact that Biyodo is a separate category, that's not problematic because we already saw Rashi and Chulin. Right? No, I'm saying Rashi and Chulin would be very smooth, and there we don't need Eidus. Why? Because it's Biyodo. And the Mela and Isha is Ne'emanus, but not Midin Eidus. But in the case of what? of ein biyado, then we really need edus, and we need the technical halachas of edus. I don't know what the Rivash is going to say in the case of Eid Echad Neman Ke Shnei Edim if the Eid Echad changes his two. Man, how far is the Rivash willing to go to classify and define Eid Echad Bisurin as Shnei Edim? I mean, he's willing to say that Psuli Edus are excluded, and later on he says Katan, right? But he's not going to require all the requirements of, let's say, two witnesses coming into Bezdin or Kevet Shehigid Shubin Echozumai.
Some of these halachas might be halachas in Eidos, some might be halachas in Bezdin. Meaning it's going to be hard to.
I don't know.
To come to conclusion.
But then, if you take a look at the paragraph V'chein Misbayer, and he quotes Tosfos in Erevin Rashba Ritva, Shita Mekubetzes, and then in the footnote he quotes a whole list of Rishonim who hold that Eid Echad Nem Bisurin is B'Toras Edus.
This might be totally what we were saying before. If you really hold that the nemanos of biyada is separate, there are very, very few cases where we're forced to
not only separate, but we're lowering the requirements, right? Meaning, right, we're saying now that you don't need edus.
Right.
Yeah, good.
Biyada requires less edus because it's biyada.
No, but I'm just saying that biyada is now more powerful, so to speak, than Eid Echad Nem Bisurin.
All of these svaras we started off with, you can't, kind of a functioning society, you can't go to your friend's house. All those cases are biyada.
Right.
The cases where you have Eid, where we
I'm
have
not
Eid
sure,
Echad,
but you have to think about that.
No,
but
it means anything you're doing for yourself, you're neman on. Only you don't have neman is I'm not neman as an Eid Echad to say that.
But I'm not sure if the fact that a woman goes to a store and she relies on whatever she's relying on, I'm not sure that's midin biyada. I mean, biyada probably means that the shochet has biyada, the mafresh has biyada, but that I testify that I know that so and so was mafresh because he's got a he's got a reliability, he's got a tudat hechsher. I'm not sure if that's biyada.
In commercialized kashrus, that's not. We don't need that nemanus. The nemanus of whether the shechita was done properly is the ashkacha on the package.
So that might require edus. Whoever signed on the package has to be an aid.
Right, but your wife is going to the store.
But the shochet doesn't have to be an aid. Do you follow what I'm saying? But if I'm saying that I know that this shechita was proper, that might require, according to Rivash, aidus. So that's why I say, even if my wife is saying, well, I bought in the proper stores and blah, 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 there's a hechsher, blah, I don't know that that's biyada. Biyada really means literally that she can fix up this meat. And if she's not a shochet, I don't know if she can do that. Or do you say no? Biyada is some sort of.
Biyada just means that
theoretically, it's like you follow what I mean?
I think
she could go to school and take a course in shechita.
She could have picked a non-kosher meat at the store. She could have, that's what I assume.
I'm not sure. I think biyada means that the Easter itself is biyada.
She's
not the fact that I could have bought from this guy, I bought from that. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure.
In commercialized kashrus, you can't have any edus or any nemanus. You have no idea what went on over there. We're relying at a certain point. It's coming with a stamp. Someone's telling us it's kosher. What's happening before, and that's not my edus or my nemanus. That's the edus or nemanus of the ashkacha.
So that be ADPA,
right? So no, the only question.
But somewhere in the whole process, there's got to be someone who's made.
Of course, the shochet and the mashkiach.
Okay, so let's call it the mashkiach, right? So the shochet himself is biyada. I'm not sure the mashkiach is biyada. The mashkiach has to be a man, according to the Rivash. Right. So because he's tested.
If we're relying on him for Eid Echad Nem Bisurin, then he wouldn't be a kosher aid. If we're relying on the shochet, presumably he wouldn't have to be.
But how do I know that this meat came under the ashkacha of the mashkiach?
That's something else. That's not the question. Do I know whether the
but I'm asking you: is that biyada? Because she could go to the store and decide that
the question you need to ask.
My question?
Yeah, the only question I think is: once the food's been unpacked, how can I trust which package it came from? That's not a question whether
that's robe and that's called a porridge.
Or maybe it's Eid Echad, but that's biyada. Did I buy this package with Eshkacha or this package without Eshkacha? That's definitely biyada.
But that's not biyod on the Easter itself.
No, that's a
That's
mios.
biyod to clarify that there is edus on this package.
Yeah, there is yada if you go to someone's house,
That-
she didn't cook meat and milk together, and she didn't do basar v'challah.
That's biyada.
That's the yada.
Okay, fine, but how do I know the meat is kosher? That's what I'm asking.
Hashkacha.
That's the hashkacha.
Yeah, but again, the hashgacha requires somewhere along the line is going to require
But not the
edus.
woman's.
Whoever gave the
The
hashkacha.
shofetz.
So if it's on the
She
pack,
brings
it
the
says
same
hashkacha
package.
or whatever.
Okay.
Rashita, whatever.
But
So the
now
onion
I don't
puts
see
in
the
the
package,
So that.
so I have to
in that
rely on my wife
whether
who
she-
says that
She
there
brought
was
that
hashkacha.
hashkacha.
Whether she did.
So that's the
So
yada.
don't I need
She
eight
testified
echem
that
bisurim?
She doesn't know.
If that be the
Trust me
case,
that
then
you
I'm
bought.
stuck with this.
That's the way to stay.
That's the only question, I think.
All right, Rabbi. So I don't know what to say over here. Ah, this is a wonderful sugya, and I want to just show you that when he has the ashito she'ein echshero b'toras edus. So, for example, in the first paragraph, Avol, he quotes the Ritva in Ksubis, Ein ze midin edus mamish, el midin biru. So I'd like you to underline that. So that's line 3 in a paragraph that starts Avol on the left column. Then he has the Nesivus in Chavas Das, Mashe Echad Nem Bisurin, Eino Mitam Edus. And here I feel very at home. Sharei Ein Tzorech Klal Hagodas Bezdin, Hagodah Bezdin. No, isn't that a logical? You know, I think if the Nesivus was sitting here in this classroom, he would say, "Don't talk to me about Edus here. Eid Echad Nem Bisurin is not Edus. If it was Edus, it requires Bezdin." Now look at the Noda Yehuda on the top of Chaf Aleph. Again, right before the lights go out. Eid Echad Bisurin lav mitoras Edus. Sharei Isha v'karov u'baldavar bi'atzmo nemonim. He doesn't even bother with the Nesivus, which I thought is basic, number one, that you need a Bezdin for Edus. He says, who are we relying on? And is kosher Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. It's an Isha, it's a Karov, it's a Baldavar. All of these were excluded. V'ena b'toras Edus. Or, for example, right? In the case of Shnei Edim, we have to hear it from their mouths. I don't have to hear it from I don't have to ask my wife, please tell me about every single thing here. Make a declaration, it's kosher. Not only that, Eid Echad Nem Bisurin. That's right. You don't trust me, make your own food. Or, for example, let's say an Eid Echad would take a piece of paper, and he writes on a piece of paper, "This is kosher."
Hashkacha. The printed, the
So wait a second, that's me peak summer. How can it be midin edus? Chen kosev b'birka Shmuel, bisurim ein hilchas edus. Oh, he tells you enough Nafkamina. Do we have a Birka Shmuel here? Probably not.
No.
I may have a Birka Shmuel if I didn't send it with 31 packages to. Anyway, Tov Reish Lamed Daled. What's Tov Reish Lamed Daled? Is that a Daled at the end or a Reish? Tov Reish Lamed Reish.
What is this at the beginning of what?
How could it be a Reish at the end?
What is it? It looks like a Reish to
It
me.
looks like a Reish.
Tov Reish Lamed Reish. What's Tov Reish Lamed Reish? Here's the lights. 1 second. It's not Misiach Lefi Tumo. It's not Kavan Shehigid.
You have it on your cell phone.
Maybe somebody could Google. I don't know.
Lamed Reish.
Tov Reish Lamed Reish. Could you do that? I don't know.
Why
Try.
not?
The Indian tough Reish.
With the Rashi Teva.
Yeah, it's not, he's not giving us a seman.
Yeah, I don't know. I may have Birka Shmuel. I don't know. If not, you could look up. You
Yeah,
could
but
probably get
that's
the Birka Shmuel on Hebrew books or Reishis Chach. What's it called? Otzar Chach, or whatever it's called.
So,
Oh, this is interesting. I forgot about this one. In Isurim, you're allowed to trust a baskol. Did you know that? I hear these things all the time. I'm
Right
just kidding.
upstairs.
So,
and 12:10.
Unavi Baruch HaKodesh. Right? A Navi tells me Baruch HaKodesh. He knows this is mutter.
Isn't the case
He doesn't
of
tell you where he
Torah
knows that
Rabbi
from.
Eliezer, isn't that Easter? And we don't.
What Tanur Shalach Noyimi?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
For Psa.
Right.
not
You know,
like
it's
the
the Tanur Shalach, the Ruach HaKodesh could not determine what the halacha is. You know, lo b'shamayim. But if the question was that of Metzius, what exactly is this Tanur? Then you could rely and be retire the Tanur based on Ruach HaKodesh or Maskal. Like he doesn't quote any sources for that. You'd have to. I think Divrei Sofer is Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. I think, if I'm not mistaken. Here's a very interesting, and with this we'll conclude for today, a diuk in the Rambam. I always say this over and over again. We learn more from what the Rambam omits than what the Rambam actually writes. So v'chein diku, you see this a fourth paragraph down on page Chaf Aleph. The Rambam in Perek Hey Mihilchas Eidus writes the following: B'shnei makomos hamina Torah Echad, b'sota ube'egla rufa, v'chein midivrei and be'edus isha. That's misa sabal. What did the Rambam leave out here? The Rambam wants to tell you in what cases did the Torah believe one aid. What should he have said? Yeah, the Rambam's not an Amoritz. He knows that aid echad bisurin. He says v'tamu achronim madua hishmin Rambam aid echad bisurin. This is like a brisker kind of reading of the Rambam. You know, why didn't the Rambam mention that which is so, jumps out at you? And the answer is because ein zemi hilchas edus. So look at what we're saying here. Now we have a tzvei dinim. Why? Because in the case of Eid Sota, in the case of Eid Al Misas Baila, in the case of Egla Rufa, where I understand who the Rotzeh, I identify the Rotzeh, that's Eidus B'fnei Bezdin. And their Eid Echad is believed B'Torah's Eidus. But in Isurim, that's not B'Torah's Eidus. So when the Ram wants to say, where did the Torah elevate and upgrade the status of Eid Echad to Shnei Eidim, he's not going to mention Isurim. Beautiful. I'm so excited about this deal.
No one ever suggested Ula by Eidechad and Misuri.
Correct.
No one suggested.
That's why I'm saying that Tzvei Dinim, even though we are rejecting that whole shita here right now, that Eid Echad is Midin Shnei Eidim, but let's admit there is such a thing as Eid Echad to B'Torah Shnei Eidim. And it's going to, and all the requirements are going to. So Rabbi said, what didn't we do today? We did not do this essay. Is that okay? Maybe, I don't know. That's very soon is big.
Yeah.
I love this essay. It's in a sefer that was put together, I assume in the Gush, I'm not sure. Oh, it's his notes? Because it says here, Nichtav v'nerech ha'yidei el Yokim Koenigsberg. Is he in the Gush? He's got to be in the Gush. He's not here?
Oh, sorry. The one in Gittin is
So Yokim Koenigsberg is around in YU? Anyway, he did a beautiful, beautiful job here. I'm equally excited by the footnotes as I am by the text itself. And it's all told 2 pages, but it's like Kol HaTorah in 2 pages.
I think next week.
Is there a vote on that? I mean, because officially we're supposed to do, for the next, what?
Dictatorship, no? Or you just decided.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I made a motion.
You might, Rav Salvage used to say, what are we learning next week, next year? And then we always knew that whatever Masechta we voted on, that's not the Masechta he's going to be teaching. That we know for sure.
Down the block.
Okay.
My daughter wants to write a note for us if we're late for class.
Yomi. Start.